so much for inviting me.
All right, without wasting time, I'll proceed to read the profile of our speaker before we proceed to hear the lecture. Mr. Nathan Vandy is a Web3 legal and business advisor who has been researching, working, and building in the blockchain space since 2017. During this time, he not only supported blockchain-based projects with startups, HTSFVIMP companies and governments, but also supported the development of blockchain-based research with INATBA, an association initiated by the European Union Commission. Since 2021, he works at the WACO, a blockchain legal and governance advisory firm based in Brussels, Belgium. With a strong knowledge of blockchain technology and legal expertise in data protection, financial regulation, and decentralized governance, he leads the legal team at WACO to deliver legal support and structuring of business initiatives for DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and other blockchain projects. Ladies, I present to you Mr. Nathan Vandy. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
Amazing to be here.
Okay, so without wasting time, we'll proceed to the lecture. You have the floor now.
Great. I'll start by sharing my screen. Can everyone see?
Yes, very well. We can see.
Yes, we can see, sir.
Okay, so today we're going to be looking at data privacy. Once my screen has loaded up. As Chioma already eloquently went through, I've got a strong background in blockchain technology, and I've got a wide range of experience from like more international companies to smaller startups and governments as well. And I'm really passionate about how blockchain is going to really change our world. And a big part of that is understanding the background behind that vision, which comes from understanding data protection. So I'm sure everyone here has heard the term data is the new oil. This was the Economist headline in 2017, and it still holds true, where majority of the wealthiest companies in the world are now digital companies. The increase in volume and dissemination of data has a lot of potential for everyone, right? It means that we can send data to each other more effectively and efficiently, and businesses can create data-driven decisions. So for example, right now, we're only able to talk to each other. I'm currently in Copenhagen, Denmark right now, and a lot of the viewers here are in Nigeria. And we're only able to contact each other because of the amount of technology improvements and data that can be sent from different sides of the world. This increased digital platforms also helps us to create new businesses and financial models, such as Western Union, which allows us to send money quickly from one area to another. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Bitcoin as well, which was the first real implementation of blockchain technology as we know it today, which allows us to send data from one person to another, and this data represents value. It represents money, and known as Bitcoin in this situation. And so the main point of this is to just emphasize how important and also impactful technology is, and how a lot of new business models are developing there. And therefore we need to understand the data that is being transferred during these business models. Why? because if not used correctly, data in the wrong hands can lead to very bad and unethical results. Can I have a raise of hands if people know about the Cambridge Analytica scandal? Yeah, amazing. So Esther knows about it. And what about the Miami scandal? Okay, so to give a brief overview, in both of these scandals, what happened is that people were, in the first one, people were able to take data from Facebook users and then give them advertisements, political advertisements that were divisive and that encourage someone to vote in one way or another, because human beings are susceptible to being influenced. And it caused the Brexit to happen, and also it is likely the reason why even Donald Trump came into power, because they were able to take people's personal data and understand how to influence them. And in the Miami scandal, the Facebook algorithm basically pushed more divisive content to the top of people's news feeds and encouraged people to, which encouraged people to become more divisive. And it actually led to a massacre of a whole group of people. And it shows you that these platforms that we're using, if the data, the personal data is in the wrong people's hands, then it can create really strong political, economic effects that affect all of us, really. On top of this, data security, not just data protection, is very vital. On the company side, they need to be able to perform their business processes, and they can't process their business if they don't have accurate data. So if their data is not secure, it's not confidential, it's not accurate, then their business processes are going to fall down. And also, companies need to protect users from hackers as well. So these are the two main issues. Once again, if people's data falls into the wrong people's hands, such as hackers, they can use them for financial exploits, to be able to take control of people's bank accounts. And because so much of our lives are online right now, this is why it's so vital and important to protect both business data and user data. A lot of people ask the question, well, who actually controls our data? Well, we've got a lot of these companies that have a large access to our data. I'm sure all of us have used one of these tools before, and using tools like Google, people are able to get an accurate understanding of what type of individual, what type of person we actually are. Same with Facebook and social media platforms and Amazon or whatever platform you use to purchase things. These are personal data that are very personal to us. And some of the things that we write in Google, we wouldn't even tell our friends or family, but there's a platform that has this information. We have this digital trail. And that's why a lot of people feel like they don't have control over their data. 10% of consumers feel like they don't have complete control, and then more than half would say that they would get their personal data back from a company if they had it. So we can see that trust in our digital age is actually fading. On top of this, there's a lot of scandals as well with companies mishandling our data too. And by these massive fines, we can see how much of a big issue. So for example, British Airways were given 183 million fine because they had a very relaxed data protection. policies and procedures, and their customer data was stolen. So this is the rough understanding of why data protection is so important. You've got mismanagement of personal data by companies, which causes issues. You have breaches of personal and financial data by hackers, and there's a lack of clarity on how our data is being used. And this is why there's the development of insurance products, legal claims, and digital identity tools. And also the development of regulations. So can I have a show of hands here who knows what the GDPR is? Amazing. Much more people than the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And then can I also have a show of hands who knows what the Nigerian data protection regulation of 2019 is? Even more. Amazing. Yeah. So it seems like we're all very aware and familiar with data protection frameworks that have been put in place by governments in certain jurisdictions in order to support the issues that I explained beforehand, but also to make sure that the frameworks don't actually harm business, but just guide business to be able to protect and also manage the data. Sorry about that, that was my grandma. And as I said, the laws are there to correct the management and protection of personal data. So who are the people that we're protecting? What is the data being protected? Why do we need to protect it? How and how long? This is what all of these frameworks look into. And for the rest of the presentation, just to make everyone aware, there will be a focus more on the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, as I do practice in the European Union. But from looking at and doing a comparative analysis of different data protection frameworks, there are a lot of similarities between all of the different data protection frameworks that I'm sure that we will be able to pick up on moving forward. So who do these laws concern? Can I have a show of hands who has actually heard of the terms data subject, data controller, and data processor? Just so I need to know how much detail I'll go into. Amazing. So there definitely are a few people in this cohort that are really interested in data protection, which is really, really amazing. For those of you that don't know what these different roles are, the data subject is the individual that provides their data to the platform, the digital platform or the company. So for example, when you use TikTok or when you use Instagram, when you're giving them your name and your email address, you are giving data which is able to identify who you are. And as long as you're identifiable, then you're a data subject. Who is the data controller? The data controller is the platform or the company which takes this data and stores it. So in example that I use, this would be TikTok, the company behind TikTok, they would be the data controller. And then the data processor is a party who's outsourced different processing activities. And in this situation, for example, with TikTok and Instagram, then a data processor might be Facebook when TikTok or Instagram take your data and share it with Facebook in order to create a better profile of who you are. And I saw a brief hand there. Is there, oh, yeah, did someone want to say something in the Q&A, or is this something that I can answer at the end? Okay, this is a really good question. Yeah, this is a really good question. How do data process start? So all this needs the knowledge of coding. Well, first and foremost, I'm not a developer, and the majority of data protection lawyers aren't developers either. But you will need an understanding of processes. So understanding how data connects from the data subject and goes to the data controller. And for this, you will definitely need to take some courses on things such as data mapping, which we'll get into a little bit later on as well. So you can understand how the data flows. So for example, when you put in your data into the laptop, what happens at the back end? So what happens in the databases of that platform? How do they manage it when it's in the database of their platform? And how do they send it to another database of another company, such as the processor? These are definitely things that you'll have to learn, but it's very procedural. It's very logical. And if you understand maths and you have a logical mind, then you'll be able to really get into this subject. It's actually, data protection is one of my favorite areas of law, actually. Was there another question? Okay, please try to put the questions in the Q&A place. Can people not hear? Okay. All right.
Hello, Nathan. I think you can just, when you finish up, you can attend to the questions at once. So you'll be able to
keep going.
Cover your, yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So, all good, all good. So companies, the data controllers and the data processors are asked to use tools such as the privacy and cookie policies in order to be clear and transparent with users about how they use their data. And later on, we'll go through some of the principles that they have to follow in order to do this based on the GDPR. They are very similar to the ones in the Nigerian data protection regulation as well. As I said, this is the one that I have to use when I'm talking to my clients. Also, on the legal side, you have to be able to identify the data which you're using. And there's four main areas, well, usually three, but sometimes we have four that we look into. The top three are personally identifiable data. So this is data that contains personal, direct, and indirect identifiers. So for example, in the TikTok example, personal data would be my name. So Nathan Vandy. It would be my age, which I'm not going to say. It would be my address. These are different things that are high risk that if someone has, then they're able to impersonate me. And it means that I'm more at risk of getting hacked. Pseudonymous data are data which are replaced with artificial identifiers. So this is, for example, if I had just my initials. So instead of it being Nathan Vandy, it would just be NV. That would be pseudonymous. And then anonymous data is data which completely cannot be related back to me. So for example, if you had a string that said 7823529, and that was an identifier for me, no one would be able to know that that string was me, and that's anonymous data. And when you're dealing with data protection, we're mainly focused on protecting pseudonymous and personally identifiable data, because this one is the personal data which can be used negatively by people if it's in the wrong people's hands. So as I said, we're going to be covering a few of the data protection principles. And in the GDPR, we have 6 main principles. They are lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. So this really focuses on ensuring that the processors and the controllers actually are following the law and they are transparent with the user. 2, we have purpose limitation. And purpose limitation refers to ensuring that if a controller or a processor explain that they're going to use data for a reason, that's the only thing that they do with that data and nothing else. Data minimization. Data minimization focuses on using the minimal amount of data necessary in order to achieve the purpose. So not taking any more data necessary than needed. Accuracy. Accuracy refers to ensuring that the data kept on a user is accurate at all times. Storage limitation. Storage limitation is similar to data minimization, but it refers more to the technical side of making sure that there is a limited amount of data being kept. And integrity and confidentiality. And this is more focused on the security side to make sure that this data is not compromised. And if there is ability for the data to be compromised, then there are alerts set up so that the controller and the processor always understands that their data has high integrity. So what's about the data subject's rights? Well, actually, I wanted to ask a question for you guys for this first. Does everyone or anyone here understand what a data subject right is? Can I have a show of hands? Data subjects rights. Okay, amazing. Really, really great. Yeah. So data subject rights are different depending on which area you're from, but there are a lot of similarities in different jurisdictions. Even in Europe, there are some, there are some slight differences. But the main ones that we're going to be looking at under the GDPR is the right to be informed. And you're going to see a lot of similarities between the principles of data protection and the rights that come from this. So under Article 13 of the GDPR, it says that users have the right to be informed. Once again, we want to know what is happening with our data, right? We want to know how someone is using our data and what they're using it for and who they've shared it with. So we have a right to be informed, and this falls under the principle of transparency and fairness. We also have a right of access. So as a data subject, we have the right to actually ask any controller or ask any processor to give us our data. And please write any questions you have inside the group on the Q&A at the bottom, and then I'll answer them right at the end. We also have the right to rectification. The right to rectification means that if there's any data that is inaccurate, that we're allowed to get it changed. And we also have the right to erasure, which means that our data can be deleted if we want it to as well. We have the right to restrict processing to tell a data controller or processor that we don't want our data to be used anymore. And there's also a notification obligation too. So if there's any issues that happen with our data, we have to be told about it. There's a right to data portability too, which means that people should be able to send their data from one processor to another. The right to object, which means that people should be allowed to say no and remove consent of their data. And no automated decision-making, which means that if there is AI involved, so there's machine learning and our data is used as part of that, then only a human should be able to have the final say about how that data is used. And this is really, really important for not just us as data subjects, but us as data protection lawyers. Because when you're working for a controller or a processor, or even supporting a data subject, you need to understand what their rights are before you can protect them. And these are the different things that you often see in privacy policies and cookies to ensure that the company has taken in all of the different regulations and is being transparent and clear with the user. So what are as I said, please put the questions that you have inside the Q&A. I see only one question in the Q&A and I see loads of hands being raised. So yeah, please continue to just put it there. That'll be great. Grounds for processing. This is an interesting one. Does anyone know what grounds for processing means? And could I have a show of hands quickly? Because I think it's a really interesting point. All right, a little bit less than the other areas. But grounds for processing means the reasons, the reasons for processing data. And we discussed first and foremost the legal definitions of data when it came to personal data, pseudonymous and anonymous data. Then we also talked about the different rights that data subjects have, and therefore the responsibilities that the controllers and processors have. And grounds for processing talks about the reason for processing. So why are they processing our data? And the grounds for processing can come from 6 main areas. We can either give consent. So I'm sure everyone knows what consent means. Consent is where you agree for someone to be able to do something for or to you. You give them agency to do that. And this is typically seen where they ask you to tick a box. Do you agree to our data protection policy? Do you agree to our cookie policy? This is typically consent, but sometimes there's other grounds for processing, such as legitimate interest. So for example, when you are signing up for a bank, they take a lot of your personal data and they can keep it for up to 8 years, depending on the jurisdiction. And for here, they use the legitimate interest of keeping your data so that they can be able to keep up with their compliance obligations in KYC laws. So they have a legitimate interest in doing, sorry, that's a legal obligation. Legitimate interest is more where there's a balance of 2. So it can also be legal obligations, but those 2 are connected. Then you can also have a public interest as well, where you have the ability to keep people's data because you are a government. Then you have contractual necessity, which is when you have a contract with someone that you need their data and they agree. Legal obligation, as I mentioned, is similar to legitimate interests, where there's a weighing of what is important. But legal obligation is when there's a specific law that says that you need to keep that data. And then vital interest as well. And this is for where there are crises. So for example, during the COVID pandemic, people were able to use this reason for holding people's data as well. So these are very important as a data protection lawyer for you to understand them, because this will ensure that whenever you're writing your data protection agreements or your privacy policies, you can explain the reason for you taking the data from the data subject. All right, that's it for that. We're gonna have a quick explanation of blockchain technology before we round up. Blockchain technology. So first and foremost, does anyone here know what blockchain technology is? Can I have a raise of hands? Okay, wow. More people know about blockchain technology than data protection. Okay, amazing, amazing. So it's really great that you guys are starting to look into blockchain technology. I would encourage you to continue doing so. It's a growing area where we need more people moving in, especially lawyers, to help understand the development, and companies also need lawyers to explain how to grow their businesses too. So it's good that you guys are here. This is a quick definition from IBM. Blockchain is a shared immutable ledger which allows us to record verified transactions and track assets in a business network. And this is a quick diagram explaining how it works. So for example, if I want to send money to you in Nigeria, I would have this transaction, and this transaction would be represented as a block. And people would see that I want to send this to you because we're all connected in a network. And if people agreed that that transaction was a good one, then all of the computers in the network would say it's valid, and then it would get added to the chain, and then you would receive your money. That's how it works simply. It uses this shared computer to be able to broadcast, validate, and store all of the transactions. And it's super powerful because I love using this analogy. Beforehand, whenever we wanted to confirm any transactions, we would use separate databases, would all have our own Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. And in order for us to sync all the transactions that were happening, we would have to send each other the Excel spreadsheet, and then it'll take a while to sync. Whereas now, does everyone know what Google Sheets is? Amazing. Okay, people know what Google Sheets is. For those of you that don't know what Google Sheets is a shared way of creating databases of information. So if I share a Google Sheet with you, you can see exactly what is being changed at that time. And that's what blockchain does. Instead of us having loads of different databases, we have a shared database and a shared truth. So everyone can see what is happening at the same time. And this is a really powerful analogy because it creates efficiency, it creates transparency, it creates the ability for us to understand what is happening in real time. And these blockchains can be visible and accessed by anyone in the world with internet. It really is revolutionary. Now, these are a few of the main properties of blockchain. It's programmable, it's distributed, as we said, it's a shared computer, it's secure, anonymous, or pseudonymous anyway. It's immutable and it's time-stamped. And just to give a high overview, there are certain issues with blockchain when it comes to data protection. The permissionlessness of blockchain, so the fact that anyone with internet can go online and find a blockchain to interact with, and the immutability, the fact that when a transaction is saved on a blockchain, that it cannot be deleted, creates two issues. First, it's difficult to understand who the data controller, who the processor, or who the data subject is, right? Because if everyone can go online and host the node and hold the blockchain, and everyone can also make transactions on a blockchain, then who is the data controller? Is everyone the data controller or no one the data controller? Who is the user? It's very difficult for us to find out because people are pseudonymous. Additionally, the right to erasure that we talked about earlier is very difficult to integrate in blockchain because data can't be deleted. Well, it's very difficult to be deleted once it's been saved to the blockchain. So these are the two main issues with blockchain and data protection, which still have yet to be solved, unless you are using different types of blockchains. Because right now I'm referring mainly to public permissionless blockchains. So we've got about 15 minutes left. So I'm quickly going to go over opportunities in data protection before we open up for some questions. And one of the biggest opportunities in data protection is jobs. The industry is growing so large that there are a wealth of jobs available, from junior positions, from intern positions, for you really to get into the industry. And I implore all of you that have an interest in data protection and blockchain to start connecting, doing some networking, building up your resume, learning a bit more about the technology and how technology stacks work, so that you can really get into the industry. Can I have a raise of hands of people who actually want to get into data protection? Amazing, amazing, a good proportion of you. Yeah, data protection is an amazing field, as I have explained. And the reason why it's so powerful is because by getting into data protection, it also allows you to get into other areas of law as well, such as financial regulation. You can get into financial law through data protection. And this is how my career worked as well. I even do a lot of corporate law as well, because you need to understand what data the corporations have, right? So it helps you to understand how corporate law works too. So it's a very, very important area, and I would encourage all of you to look into it. In fact, the way I got my first job in data protection was actually through LinkedIn, where I'll tell you guys a little story. I went to LinkedIn and I went to the search bar and I typed in "we space r space hiring." And then and I typed in blockchain as well. And the first name that came up was my CEO for 2 years. And it shows you that sometimes you have to think outside of the box. You can just look on job boards as well, but there are little ways that you can think laterally in order to get inside the industry. But feel free to reach out to me, guys. Thank you for listening to me. I know that this was a bit of a high level overview of data protection and data protection law. I didn't go into too many of the specificities of Nigerian data protection, but this is so that anyone can be able to understand it, because these principles, these rights, and these grounds for processing are more or less very similar in each jurisdiction. So thank you once again. Thank you so much, Deborah, for inviting me, and thank you for the team. And I've got 40 minutes for any questions. Amazing. I presume I'll just...
Thank you, Mr. Nathan, for joining us for this amazing power-packed session. My name is Catherine, and I implore everyone, all interns who have questions for our speaker, please drop it in the question and answer session so he can attend to them. Thank you.
Amazing. So yeah, we got some great questions in here. I'll get to these first before I get to the ones in the chat. So from Lamut, if you want to report a data privacy breach, are there agencies or organizations that handle these issues? So typically there are organizations that handle it on a national level. So for example, in the UK, there is the ICO, the Initial Commissioner's Office, the Information Commission's Office, and they are the ones that you report to if there are any breaches. There are also some associations that you can speak to explain if you have any issues, and they will also support you. In Europe, we have something called nyob.eu. I'll put it inside the comments so you guys can see NYOB. And it stands for None of Your Business. And they support people who have their data subject rights infringed. So if one of your data rights is infringed, they will support you, and you can report to them and speak to them about it. They are primarily focused on the EU though, but I'm sure there are a few that are grown in Africa as well. How do you create cookies? Well, cookies are basically the data that we have in our laptops and our computers and our devices whenever we interact with a web page, an internet page. And these cookies are basically ways that the controller or the business, the website, stores information about what we've done on their website, so that when you return to it, you're able to have the same user personalized experience. So they store these cookies on your on the website, on your device, so that you can always have the same experience. You don't have to put in your name all the time. The thing is that sometimes they share this personal information they have with you with other websites as well. And then they have a big cookie jar with all of the different data that they have for you, from you. And sometimes they don't just use it to personalize your website, but they share it with other people as well. So that's one thing that you got to learn about cookies. Sorry, I couldn't dive a little bit deeper into that. As I said, guys, if you got questions, please put them inside the group chat, inside the Q&A. The next question is, how can we get into data protection law? Well, a big thing to do would be to find a law firm or a data protection boutique which focuses on data protection, and then write them a cover letter to explain why you want to get into that area. That's a really, really important way to, if you really, really like data protection, or speak to other data protection lawyers and ask whether they know any job offerings available as well. That's a really good way to do it, because it's a great area of law. And if you have subjects inside your school which have data protection, take those. For me, for example, I did my master thesis on blockchain technology and data protection so that I could be established as an expert in that area. So it was easier for me to get a job because I did my thesis on that area. So that's a way to get into it as well. How does the data processor and controller ensure that rectified data is authentic without breaching the data's right to rectification? This is very important, Miriam. Really good question. And it shows that you have already thought about what's going on under the hood. And this is why we have auditors, Miriam. We have people that audit people's GDPR once a year, especially the bigger companies, to make sure that they are doing what they say they are doing. And it would be your job, Miriam, as a data protection lawyer, to make sure that this actually happens. So to speak with the technical team, to speak with the developer team, to make sure that this happens. But really good question, Miriam. Aloka, my social media platforms are always restricted. I really don't know why. I'm not too sure what you mean by restricted. Yeah, I'm not too sure what you mean by restricted. I'll check in the group chat if you want to add a bit more. But if you mean restricted in the sense that they restrict the permissions that you give them, then that's a good thing, right? You don't always want to give all your personal data to these platforms, the ones that they don't need anyway. Do I have to be licensed to practice law in a country before being a data protection lawyer in that country? No, you don't actually, which is why data protection law is one of the really strong areas of law as well. You don't have to be a certified lawyer to practice data protection law. Of course, when it comes to being involved in cases in court, of course, you would need to be pass the bar or be licensed. But when it comes to compliance, data protection compliance, law and compliance, and working in companies, you don't. So that is something to be aware of as well. And it makes it easier to move through jurisdictions. I would say to focus on one jurisdiction first, become a professional there, and then you'll start to do comparisons between different areas and be able to understand the similarities between different jurisdictions. And also, if you see yourself being a lawyer, really get that license anyway. And then once you have that experience, you have that license in one jurisdiction, it'll be very easy for you to develop into an international lawyer. And I think that is the similar question. Data protection jobs are open to those in Nigeria, but I would definitely encourage you to get a grounding in your jurisdiction before you move to others. It's really, really important. Because if you shine in your own jurisdiction, then you're more likely to be able to leverage into others. If you want to work as a data protection officer, what do you study or what do you need to know? Study data protection law. Human rights law is important too. And also try to get a strong understanding of technology. You don't need to take a whole course in computer science, but to understand the processes and systems that go on behind it is really important. Data protection is related to intellectual property in a way, but yeah, intellectual property is more about the protection of creative work, where data protection is the protection of personal data. So there's similarities, but they're not exactly the same thing. If I develop an interest in law, Nigeria does not teach data privacy and protection in undergraduate level. More than understandable. How do I kickstart my career or develop my interest in this area? Do I need to take this courses on an international level? Thank you so much, Lillian, for explaining that. And definitely I would ask you to check out Maastricht University and Udemy. There's some really good courses there in order for you to understand it more on an international level. One of the reasons why, if you're going to learn it, understanding the GDPR is so good is because many of the data protection frameworks are based on the EU GDPR. So I would definitely find a course on that. Said, I didn't get you when you explained what cookies are. I've accepted a lot of cookies and I still don't know what purpose they serve. So as I explained, cookies are there to be able to authenticate and personalize your web experience. So whenever you go to a website, let's say you go to a Google and you type in the different things that you want, they will save these information so that when you come back, they will be able to show you similar personalized experiences. And that's simply how it is. It's just the ability for you to have a personalized experience. And sometimes they share these with other companies. I do not understand why they call them cookies. You are so intelligent and handsome, sir. I appreciate the compliment. And if you can see good in others, then you've got good in yourself. Can someone interested in tech law combine these aspects? Of course, I combine blockchain and data protection law, and that's what I do for a living. If I delete my search history on a website, does the company have them? Yes, they do. If you want it deleted, you have to specifically ask that company to delete it. And they usually have something in their privacy settings where you can find an email. And does having a presence online automatically make you a data subject, or must you have submitted your data online? Exactly. So as soon as you put any information on LinkedIn, you're automatically a data subject. As soon as you sign on to LinkedIn, you're a data subject. Because you've given your personal data to that platform. I'll follow up with that question to get some other courses which are a little bit more accurate, and I'll send that to Deborah after the call. But yeah, those are all the Q&As. Thank you so much, guys. I'll quickly take a look here. Yeah. Yeah, and erasure doesn't work with incognito. Incognito just means that your history won't be saved, but just because your history isn't saved, it doesn't mean that your personal data isn't being saved in their database. It just means in your history, it won't be saved, so people can't see it. Amazing. As I said, guys, do feel free to reach me at nathan@wasau.org or on LinkedIn at Nathan Vandy. I did apologize to Deborah. I do have to keep things tight today because I do have a back-to-back day of meetings, but I'm so encouraged to see the energy from you guys. As I said, if a lot of people do want to reach out to me to ask questions about data protection and how to get into the industry, feel free, or even questions about law or my career as well. I'd be more than happy to set up, have a conversation, just to push you in the right direction. You guys just being here is, it says a lot about the next generation. And thank you so much once again, Deborah, to you and your team for setting this all up. It's amazing.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you. Catherine, sorry, I'll hand over to you in a jiffy. Nathan, thank you so much. I really appreciate. It's okay. I'll hand over to you right away. I understand your schedule, and I really appreciate the fact that you were able to make out time to join us. I know we have learned so much. I did personally, and I know that a large number of all the interns here did learn from what you have taken us on. And of course, we do hope for further of your presence in our subsequent editions. Nathan, do you have like a few minutes to spare while we launch a poll?
I do have 2 seconds, yes.
Okay, or don't let me bother you. We can do that subsequently when you're gone, so you can get ready for your other commitment. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to Catherine now. Thank you so much, Nathan. I do really appreciate your time here. Today it was great and impactful.
I can't wait till the next one, Deborah. Thank you for inviting me once again, and thank you to your team. Ciao, ciao, everyone.
Very well. All right, bye. Thank you. Bye. Yeah. Catherine, please, over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think the speaker has gone now. Thank you, Mrs. Deborah, Barrister Deborah, for this opportunity. We do not take it for granted. And please, I'd like to inform all interns that the first set of presentation will be happening tomorrow, and there will be no session tomorrow. We'll be strictly working on the group presentation. A write-up will be sent immediately after this meeting to the group chat, and you check it for all the information you need for your group presentation. Thank you so much for logging in and for joining us on this amazing session. We really appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm pretty sure we've learned so much today. Thank you and have a very great day.
Hello, Catherine. Sorry,
yes,
can we launch the poll? Can we launch the poll?
Okay.
All right,
now.
We'll launch it right away. Yeah.
Please, guys, hold on while we launch the poll so you can participate in that.
All right, thank you all. That will be all. We're done with the poll. All right, over to you, Catherine. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma. And thank you everyone for joining in this session. And I hope each and every one of us is getting really prepared for our group presentation. And this is also urging everyone to please participate and cooperate with your group leader and coordinator so that you make the best of this virtual internship program Hilton Top Solicitors and Barrister Deborah has put together for us. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you, Ma. We can all leave the meeting.
All right, thank you, Catherine. God bless you. Thanks for your time and all your effort. Thank you, Chioma, and thank you to all the members of the amazing team for this year's virtual internship. Thank you to all of you, great interns. I hope you're really learning as we go by the day. The Lord bless you and keep you safe and strong. We meet again tomorrow. I think the presentation will be starting tomorrow. The time will be conveyed to you by the team. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Chioma. And thank you, all of you. God bless you. Bye.
Have a great day, Ma. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Have a blessed day.